Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a new installment of Movies Down Memory Lane. I'm Stephen Billings. Who is this over here? Either
Dan Skip out.
and you?
I'm Andrew.
Oh,
You guys know me?
you guys are jumping. You
Should
just
know
really
me.
jumping on it, huh?
Yeah,
Um,
if you're a frequent visitor of the Chasing Labels YouTube channel, you should know me pretty well by now for the
Yeah.
elongated streams of Chasing Labels.
exactly. And so we're here back for. This is the first time we've done this in a few months. So Movies Down Memory Lane, we started this last year where we did. At first, initially, it was an idea where we would pick a subject, whether it be like a director or an actor, and we would go through their filmographies, gushing about their filmographies, going through it. And we did Jim Carrey to start. We did 3 parts. We split his career up into 3 parts and had fun with that. But ultimately, I think, at least for me, decided that, if we're going to fit something else on the channel to do routinely, it needed to be shorter form. Andrew does a 4-hour stream. He does these long form streams. Then we do Unwatched Pile, which Unwatched Pile I think is relatively convenient. I don't think it's too overly long, but it is a little longer than short. So this is going to be shorter than that. This is going to be hopefully under an hour. And this and that, I'm thinking maybe every other week we do this. We might start out once a month, but I think the goal will be every other week eventually if this is flowing nicely and it's going the way we want it to go. So, but the concept was that it was going through filmographies and running through them and talking about it all. But now this new iteration is going to be a little different. This new iteration is going to be more directed to our personal tastes, but focusing on things that have had a profound effect on us. So in this way, you're going to get to know each of us really well, because each time we come back, a new person's going to pick a film that has really profoundly affected them. Not only like film as an art form, like loving the art of whatever it is that we're talking about, but more so that this has personally affected them. It's personally related to them, or it really just has had such a profound effect that it's stuck with them for a while. So that's what the choices are for each of these movies. That's what's behind each of the choices. And that's what we're going to do here is one person's going to pick a movie that's really profoundly affected them. We're going to everybody's going to have probably a different take on the movie, maybe, or they might feel the same. We'll see how it goes, but it's up to, in this case, Dan is the first one up, and it's me and Andrew's job to almost kind of interview him to get as much out of him as possible, but make him cry. We want to make sure that he tells us why he loves this movie so much. And yeah, so anything else to add to that? That's essentially the concept, Andrew.
Yeah, conceptually it's going to be very much a nostalgic ridden type of premise. Things that, perhaps meant a lot to us when we were at our formidable age of being younger. Obviously, Dan will have a different perspective because of the difference in age range. Stephen and I, relatively similar age, but different tastes in things and whatnot. So things will be hopefully a little bit diverse when it comes to our different tastes and what movies have meant to us. I think is kind of the real heart of the matter, because most of us have been in the movie world since we were very little. I think that's where our origin story pretty much has all started. We all started watching them when we were super young, whether it be at the movie theater, VHS, Laserdisc, younger audience, people listening, probably DVDs, even younger people streaming, whoever sees this in the future. But yeah, that's kind of the whole idea, is kind of, getting to the grassroots of our love of certain types of movies. And it's like Steven said, it's possibly not going to be like the greatest cinema of all time with the capital C.
No,
It'll be
not
things that
always.
are meaningful to us in our specific personal lives.
Yeah, I mean, but it can be. You'll see with this first film, Dan's first pick is a classic movie. It's considered to be almost a masterpiece to some people. So sometimes there'll be movies that are very widely known and proclaimed as being great, but sometimes they might be very small family films, or they might be a horror film that was like the first time I got scared, or the first time I cried in a movie. Like it could be for many different reasons. But these are just films that have hit us and stuck with us for a long time. So, yeah. With that said, Dan, you were the first one to get to go down this lane, the first trip down the lane here, and get a pick. So what as we see in the graphic here, tell us the film you picked.
Yeah, I've known these guys for quite a while. We've been doing YouTube shows for about 10 years now. I know it sounds weird that three guys have been doing YouTube shows together off and on for a long time. We've had, you guys broke off and did your own thing for a while, and I went off and did my own thing for a while now. And, we're coming back together because we're such good friends, and we love movies, and we love the dynamic of the three of us talking about movies. We love that dynamic as well. I think that's the fun part about why we keep coming back, because we just love each other so much, and we love discussing movies.
Whoa, Dan.
Yeah.
The L word. God damn.
You know what I mean?
No,
in general, we love in general.
We love you. We love you too. I don't know about Andrew, but I love you too, buddy.
And one of my favorite genres is the Western genre. I've talked to these guys about it for quite a while now. I just absolutely love the Western genre. I think it's a genre that's coming back a little bit today. It hasn't fully come back to where I would like to see it come back in like the 50s and 60s, but this in the 80s and 70s had a little bit with Clint Eastwood and stuff like that. But High Noon stars Gary Cooper as Will Kane, and he's the sheriff of this little town, and he's about to get married to his woman, his girlfriend, his fiance or whatever, played by Grace Kelly. And they're gonna just leave. He's just gonna retire, and he's gonna leave with his wife, gorgeous Grace Kelly. They're going to go off into the sunset until a guy comes and says that the guy that runs the train station comes, and he says he just got a note, Wells Fargo, or what would you call those notes that they teletype or whatever?
Like a telegraph?
Telegraph.
And it said that Frank Miller, not the comic book artist.
No, not him.
Creator,
that would be worse.
Miller, even though he kind of looks like him a little bit. He kind of looks like him a little bit, like a younger version of Frank Miller in a way.
Okay, all right.
If you kind of put the two together, is coming back into town on the noon trade. And 5 years prior, Will Kane had put him away. And so he decides, instead of leaving, he's going to stay to fend off this threat of this killer, Frank Miller and his gang. And that, I don't want to give too much away, but that's basically the crux of the story. There's an aspect to the story that I want to get into if you guys start asking me questions about it, because I can hopefully frame the answers in ways where I'm not spoiling the movie, because you obviously don't want me to spoil a 76-year-old movie right now. So,
well, I mean, look, we're going to say this at the top. Sometimes there's going to be times where we might need to spoil the movie to get into certain aspects. So if you have not seen this film yet, the 1952 film, High Noon, please just stop here. Go watch it. It's on Pluto TV. So it's available. Anybody can watch it. And go check it out first. Check it. It's worth a watch. It's not long. So I think it's like an hour and a half long. It's nothing. So please go check it out first. But before we get into talking more with Dan, I didn't mean to bring this up too. So every time we do this show, the person that is at the person that we're going to have this meter here that kind of gives you a gauge. It's kind of our Rotten Tomato meter, if you want to call it that. But we call it the feelometer, where we feel, the philometer, however you want to pronounce it. But it's a way of gauging where each of us are. Now, of course, Dan picked this, so he's automatically going to be high on the philometer here. We got Obsessed, of course. We have Good Stuff, I Respect It, and Not For Me. So that's where we are with the different gauges. And Dan, yeah, you're obsessed with this film. You're at the top there. So we're going to come back to us later to let you know where we're at the end of the conversation, and kind of where we started and where we ended up at the end of the conversation. So we'll come back to that. But that is our monitor for each episode. So remember that. Play along at home. Here we go. But all right. So Dan, please start. When was the first? When did you first see the film? Tell us that.
Well, I didn't see it as far back as you'd think I have seen it.
Wait. When were you born?
1974.
All right.
1974, and I started watching movies regularly in about 1980, and I did find westerns as a genre that I watched, but one I did not get to right away was High Noon. But when I finally saw High Noon, I just gravitated towards it because of this man who's basically a loner. Yeah, he's getting married and all this, but
Sure.
When you watch the movie, you'll see that he's a loner. He's got some friends, but they're not really his best friends when it matters to him. And I really relate to this movie in a lot of ways because I feel like I'm a loner in a lot of senses. I feel like even though I do have a family and I have brothers and a sister and so forth and a father, I just feel like one by one, my family and my friends and stuff have kind of abandoned me. And I feel like that I've been alone my whole life. Yeah, I do YouTube shows and I do film criticism. I have writers that write for me, but in general, I feel by myself. This movie really brought out the fact that, people can abandon you in your life, and it's not a fun experience when it's the most important times in your life, whether it be you're in trouble or if you lose your job or if you're in financial difficulties or something like that. And it really just, the more I watch it, the more it resonates with me about loneliness and being by yourself and having to do things on your own, have to pay your bills. And if your car breaks down, you have to figure a way to get your car fixed and whatnot. Or if you can't pay your rent, you got to figure a way to pay your rent. Or if you don't have any food, you have to find ways to get food so you can eat, so you don't starve, And I really, 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 and I don't mean to use the word really, but I really resonate with the Will Kane character. And for that reason.
Okay. Interesting. It's and Andrew, you can back me up, take me wherever you want, wherever you were thinking. But it's interesting, and this is with any film. Anytime I've had film discussions with people, and they have a certain perspective, or they attach themselves to a certain idea in the film and take it in that direction, and I'm with you there. I see where that aspect, because I think we've all three of us, we have dealt with that maybe in our lives at some point, or even still today. But also, I think that's for honestly just a small aspect of really what this movie's about. I think ultimately this movie, for me, and I've watched this film one other time other than the time that I've watched it for this show. So I've only seen the movie twice. But on my second time watching it, which I think was a more profound watch, because the first time I watched it years ago, and I was a different type of film person, and I'd watched a lot of other Westerns before this that I think I liked more. But now that I'm older and I've been through more things, and I watch this movie now, I see the themes so much more clearly. And I think, I think also that, like you said, like I said, your ideas, them ideas are there, what you're connecting with. But I think overall, I think this movie is really about it's about integrity, masculinity, proper masculinity, a proper way of having great character. And almost it's almost, and it's when we get to the thermometer later, I'll express this more, but almost to a fault. He's almost like a superhero. He's like Superman, where he's almost doesn't have any negativeness about him. He's completely perfect. He's not doing anything in the movie that's controversial, which makes this type of Western probably not connect with me as much. I like the more grounded with the Westerns where there's a little bit more muddy characters, muddy morals, things that somebody like Sergio Leone would do, or something like Peckinpah or something like that. But honestly,
maybe.
this even huh?
Or like Unforgiven, where the good guy's the bad guy and the bad guy's the good guy.
Exactly. Like that's stuff like that connects with me more. But I do think if you look past that, still the ultimate, the themes of the story are really like interesting and connective, and they're like really good things for people to really. It's good. It's a good example for young people. It's a good, like showing an example of somebody that has great character, great integrity, and no matter what happened to him throughout the story, nobody backs him up. He thinks that the town that he basically cleaned up on his own would back him up when he needs them. They need him the most when he needs them the most, and then nobody wants to be there for him when he needs them. And then he takes care of it himself. And then, like he has so many things that stand in his way that he doesn't let it bring him down. Andrew,
I was going to say it is a very kind of black and white story, literally and figuratively, and I understand what you're saying about the kind of the westerns. I think that would come after this.
Yeah,
like things in the later 50s into the 60s, you would get the more gray area characters, get the more murky characters, even in more traditional westerns. That would come in, obviously with the spaghetti westerns. That's all over the place. But like you're saying, even with Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, all that kind of stuff. But this is the early 50s, kind of the standard Old West. But you're right, there is a sense of like staunch heroism in there, and very in stoicism. You know what I mean? And for me, Gary Cooper is probably one of the most stoic characters in this, not only in this film, but I think like even his acting ability throughout his career, even going back to the 30s, he's always such a stiff. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but he's always such a stiff, like a stiff piece of wood, like old Hick. He's kind of like that, where he just like he's going to be the guy who stands up literally to an adversary, which he does in this movie. And the idea of that, like Stephen was saying, is that you would think that a sheriff would have garnered, well-liked sheriff would have garnered, good positivity around him, a good reputation around him, where people would rally and help him and all this kind of stuff. But that is not such the case.
Well,
and I don't want to,
no, you're good.
There, but even if he had to do it alone, he would do it alone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Seems to be the type of character he is in this movie, and those are admirable, admirable traits that you can translate to real life. What's kind of cool is that all those things are in a Western setting, but you can take those same themes and put them in other genres and other films and other stuff like that, which they have. So they kind of taken these themes in here and put them in other films. That's why I think this movie has kind of stood the test of time. It's the timeless themes, the timeless stuff. Not only just because it's a Western, because the Western genre, as we know now, is not a dead genre, but it's not quite alive as it was back in the day. It certainly has its appreciation now, I think, more than its fandom. It has more of an appreciation now because people like Dan, Steven, and I, and other, film lovers, film collectors, whatever, go back and watch High Noon. We watch all these other Westerns as well, so we can appreciate the genre for what it is. And this movie, I think, is such a standout in it. So I kind of like, but Dan, you were saying, so you saw this probably at a very young age. I'm assuming on TV, right?
On TV. Yeah, I saw it on TV, and I looked at I watched this movie, and I saw this cast that's in there besides Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. I was like guys like Lon Chaney Jr., which I absolutely love his portrayal as the Wolfman. He is amazing, and he's got like he was the sheriff before Will Kane, and he's got like bad thumbs and stuff, and so he wants to help Will Kane out, but he feels like he can't pull the trigger. He wouldn't be able to pull the trigger in time. Then you have Lloyd Bridges, who is the young upstart, like assistant sheriff who wants to become the sheriff. And he was looking forward to Will Kane leaving town so he could become the sheriff. But he's that young, brash kid, not necessarily ready for the role of being the sheriff just yet. And of course, a young guy and the old grizzled veteran, they kind of butt heads a little bit there, and then you got there's other people in here. I know the names of them now at the top of my head. I can't think of Bookham Dano. What's a or like an old sitcom, police sitcom. What's the guy? He was in an old police sitcom.
Harry Morgan.
Yeah, Harry Morgan. He's in there. I mean, it's got a really good supporting cast,
and just thrown in there is Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah, Lee Van Cleef. One of his earliest movies. He becomes one of the biggest villains, Western villains in decades to come. But when there's a Latino woman who's in here, and you never saw Latino women in roles like this back in the. And she kind of bossed people around. She told people what to do. Don't touch me. I don't like it when people touch me. That lady, I thought she was really good. And because the 50s, you didn't see a lot of color or a lot of Latino actors in a lot of roles. So for her to be in there and have a good role, I thought that was pretty good too, Yeah,
I mean, there is a little history to this film too. I mean, this was during the blacklisting times.
It's a metaphor for the blacklisting and the House Un-American Activities. This idea of people being called out for being communist sympathizers, people being called out by Joseph McCarthy and Congress, and then none of their friends coming to their aid to help them out and back them, them just being literally alone. It's a whole metaphor on that. It was a very controversial movie at the time because it was very much kind of criticizing the people for not supporting each other.
Yeah, and then other, of course, the top Western star of the time, John Wayne, hated this movie.
Yes, to the point where they made
their own movie.
That's literally the opposite of this in Rio Bravo, where in that movie it's the same situation: an outlaw's coming to town, and the marshal in the case in High Noon, or the sheriff or whatever, needs to get people to help out, and then everybody comes to help him out in that movie.
Yeah,
little spoiler for Rio Bravo, and that was directed by Howard Hawks.
Yeah,
some years later. It's kind of fascinating how the interplay, the interpolitics of Hollywood has never really gone away. It's still around to this day. But I'm just curious, Dan, how many times have you visited this movie over the years?
I probably half a dozen to about a half a dozen times or so, or 12 times or so, between half a dozen and a dozen times. I find myself watching at least once a year, because when I really want something that will lift me up in a way, like in a positivity way, when I'm struggling and stuff, I find I go back to High Noon because of this. The Gary Cooper character just reminds me of myself in a lot of ways.
Well, you say a lot of it is the relatability of how you felt like lonely in the film, but wouldn't you say maybe that his character maybe is like what we all strive to be? We all strive to be a person like Gary Cooper in that movie, and maybe that's part of why you relate to him, because I think most of us in our minds, we would like to be like that type of person, somebody that stands up for the right things, stands our ground, has convictions.
No, I also relate to. I also do relate to the Will Kane character in those ways. I know I put it
because you're only focusing on how you felt like it relates to something negative in your life. And like
I do relate. I do relate to that part, but I like the fact that he is a good guy and he stands up for the right thing. He could have just rode out of town with his beautiful wife, Grace Kelly, and instead he comes back and he decides to defend the town, and then we see what happens when he tries to defend the town. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I do recommend. I thought that was a given. That's like a given.
It's not a given. Not everybody. I'm trying to learn, Dan. I'm trying to learn about why you like something.
I do love that stuff. That stuff's the obvious stuff that you why you would like this movie. But I find there's levels to the story more so than just the hero decides to stay and defend the town against this bad guy that he put in prison 5 years earlier.
But the thing is like you relate to that, but the character that you relate to doesn't have he might not have anybody there to back him up, but he ain't a lonely person. He's got Grace Kelly. He's going to be fine.
Well, yeah, he does.
He just got married to one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood. but but so that's not relatable. But what I'm saying is I think without thinking about it, them are things you relate to, but ultimately because of your situation, you're in life, you felt like that's something that you pulled out of it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's interesting that that's what you focused on. Because I mean, that's not something I would have focused on right away. It would have been the fact that, the thing to me, it's not that it's loneliness, but it's more that people take things for granted. I think that that's the way I look. It's almost kind of an opposite way of thinking about it. I don't focus on the fact that he's alone, but I focus on the fact that society takes things for granted, especially our people in service of us, like our police officers, our firemen, our people that are in service of us all the time, that sacrifice themselves. We take them for granted all the time. That's kind of the way I see it, is society forgets about their heroes sometimes.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right about that. We unless one of our heroes, like a police officer, does something wrong.
But that's what media focuses on. That's not every that's not the face of what every police officer or every fireman or what that's the thing, is we always focus on that stuff. But you don't see, it's just like we don't see as many nice stories in the news as we see bad. We've seen the movie Nightcrawler. We know that.
Yeah.
It's all about if it bleeds, it leads. We know, that's the way media is. But I think that's part of the messaging here in the movie for me is that it's trying to relate the idea that, we kind of take people like this for granted. He cleaned up even people defended him in the church scene where they're trying to, the women were like, remember when this place used to not be a place we could have our kids out, he cleaned up this town and now you don't want to help him? Like, come on. Like,
it's very interesting how also like all of the people that kind of back out, they all come up with like some type of excuse, or there are actually, what's interesting about the movie is that we see this kind of in life a lot as well. Where people will be all enthusiastic, they'll all jump in and be, incredibly active. Like, oh yeah, I'll stay to help you do this or do that or whatever. But then when like the moment is getting closer and closer, you start to see the real how they really feel about it come out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? We see this all the time.
And there's a running, and that's the one good thing about this movie too, is like it's got that running clock. It's got that, we know at noon, that's when we keep looking at the clock every once in a while, like, oh, we got like fucking 2 hours before the shit's going to go down.
Yeah.
Like,
the trains run, most trains run on time. Most of them don't. You would think you would like that. But you see kind of that aspect of like the hesitancy of people when push comes to shove, as the word comes. We see that in real life with like small, meaningful things, not like not taking out outlaws in the Old West, but like someone like helping you do something like moving or something.
We've probably already been there. We've all been there. Like, somebody asks us to help them move and something comes up. We said, oh, we can't help them move. Oh, can you come over and help me in my yard? I got something came up. I can't do it. We've all been there. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is like it. So like, that's like relatable on a very personal level for probably a lot of people watching, because we do know people like that, kind of people who flake out at the last second, to put it in a harsh term, I guess.
I know a few of them people.
It's like, and it happens, it happens. And now, whether their reasoning is valid or not, we don't really kind of know. Well, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But in the sense of High Noon, they probably just don't want to die, don't want to potentially die. You know what I mean?
They think it's gonna just work out. Like they're like, whatever.
Also, like they think like, oh, I do it, I guess like more people are gonna come in, so yeah, I can just be like in the background. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is gonna be like this posse. This is gonna be like 100 of us, so this is gonna be easy. But then when you go to them later, be like, oh yeah, it's just me and you. And then you're like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't be.
Without spoiling too much, but you don't want to spoil that moment. But
people in that way, what I mean?
I know what you're saying. I know, we've seen the movies, but no,
that's that Gary Cooper's facing in this movie. So it's not just old Western problems, like there's a mining incident or whatever, or bandits actually coming. He's dealing with kind of real world human, interaction, which I think is one of the great things about the movie, why it's so what stands up so much.
Yeah.
And there's one aspect I want to ask you about. So a lot of times, and this is a problem we have with films even today, a lot of times, like the wife character, whatever female character is kind of the co-lead. In this case, of course, Grace Kelly. A lot of times that character doesn't get nothing to work with. Not no interesting character development, nothing. I think Grace Kelly goes through a little bit of a journey in this film, learning more about the man she married, and learning more about what he's all about. She didn't really know completely, and you know how that is back in them times. People would just marry for different reasons other than I'm in love. But she really starts to learn the man she married in this situation, and I thought probably one of the best scenes in the film reminded me of another great film that I think maybe we'll get around to on one of these episodes. Reminded me of the film Rocky, or not Rocky 1, but probably I think this is Rocky 3. Rocky 2, where there's a scene in this film, High Noon, where she's talking to him and trying to kind of convince him that he doesn't need to stay here. He doesn't need to do this. He's not the marshal anymore. Well, he's like, well, the marshal's going to be here till tomorrow, so it's my responsibility to do this. She just keeps trying to convince him. And it reminded me of the same scene in Rocky 2 where Adrian's trying to convince him he doesn't have to go back. And then he says that line that always sticks with me in that film. Like, when we got married, I didn't ask you to stop being a woman. Don't ask me to stop being a man. And so I kind of felt that without saying that exact thing, that's kind of what Gary Cooper's going through in this moment, where he's talking about, like, look, as a man, this is my duty to defend these people. Like, not just as a sheriff, but as a man, I'm supposed to protect these people. I'm not going to just leave, So,
using Rocky as an example, you can't win,
Yeah.
That's another line from Rocky.
Yeah.
You can't win. And she basically is like, you're not going to know. Everybody's like telling him you can't win.
You just need to go. Just leave.
Yes. Yeah. But in life, you can't leave your life, right? When I grew up with two brothers and a sister and a father that wasn't always there. But when my mother, she would take us to all these different places to get food and get assistance from places like the Knights of Columbus, the Salvation Army, and places like that, to help get, so I learned at a young age that you have to just keep fighting. You have to, even though you're by yourself, you don't have anybody, people make excuses where they can't help you out. And you're alive and you're here on earth and you're living your life. You got to find a way to keep going. You got to find a way to
find something to live for.
Yeah. You got to find something to live for. And that's where I really feel that, his wife and all these people in this town, he thought we're his friends,
Well, you see this isn't really a spoiler, but at the end of the film, the last moment where he just drops it and leaves. He just throws his shield in the dirt, looks at all the people around him. He drops his shield in the dirt and leaves with his wife. He's like, I'm done with these people. I've done my duty.
Remember the end of Point Break? Same thing happened.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. He does. Man, we're connected movies.
I know.
But I think you hit on something too. The look of the movie. Fred Zinnemann was the director of this, Andrew, and he's an up and down director. He's not like got the great, most famous filmography, but he's made some really, really good movies. And he was a guy in Hollywood that did have respect in Hollywood, and people did respect him. And it's just some of the shots in this movie are just a gorgeous shots. It's for a black and white movie of that era. A lot of movies were black and white, but this one really had it used the shadowing, and you knew it was based on a back lot in Hollywood or something because of the doors and some of that type of stuff, but it just used the location and used the shadowing and stuff like that. You feel like you're with him when he's alone. Like he's got the only thing following him is one shadow. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And the cinematography really represents how alone and how by himself he is, you know? You guys notice that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, most of the movie he's by himself. I mean, a lot of close-ups. I think that always does the job too. You know, a lot of close-ups. Yeah. I mean, he, you know, like you said, Gary Cooper is very stoic as an actor, and he's very stoic in this film. So I think that quiet confidence, that quietness lends itself to that loneliness as well. That sense of being on this journey and slowly understanding that he's going to have to do it himself. It's just, yeah, it's there.
And then the guy in the hotel was really telling for me, because this is the guy that necessarily didn't agree with what Will Kane was doing. And didn't actually have the best things to say about Will Kane. He said, well, this hotel that you see, it was a booming hotel. Everybody was having a good time. There's plenty of people in here. And since he got rid of Frank Miller and put him in jail, you can see this hotel is empty now. You know, and so even for the good guys that have a good reputation, or us that want to resonate with the good guy, for not everybody thinks that guy's the good guy. And I resonated with that too, because I feel like I've always tried to be the good guy in my own life, in the world that I live in, but people don't like me. I have people that adamantly dislike me for various reasons. And that's the thing about this movie. It doesn't sugarcoat and doesn't like gloss over all of its themes. It really gives you these themes in a really fantastic way with the script and the direction and stuff.
Yeah. And I think very well edited. It did win an Academy Award for editing and the best leading actor role for Gary Cooper. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. So all this stuff, you know, accounts for just a really well made film. And so getting to our philometer here. Now we know where Dan is.
Right.
Now, starting with you, Andrew, where were you before this on the philometer here?
Well, I've always really loved this movie, even from a first time watch.
Yeah.
And I still think that it's probably even gotten better for me over time. Similar to what you said, Stephen, coincidentally. But the thing is, I think I started higher than you. I think, yeah, I'm probably, where's the philometer there? Let me see where we are. There it is.
You don't just, yeah.
I'm not obsessed, but I'm above
good stuff. You're like,
I'm above good
stuff. Yeah.
I'm in between good stuff and obsessed.
So you're getting closer to being obsessed with it, but you're not quite as obsessed. Maybe it doesn't relate to you as much as it relates to Dan.
It does, yeah. It doesn't hit as hard as you were saying some other Westerns do, which I know probably shouldn't, factor that into, because I want to take the movie as itself.
Sure.
But the movie is incredibly streamlined, and it is incredibly focused on a specific message in the movie that sometimes entirely works, sometimes doesn't. But there's so much good in the movie. There's so much good in it. Like you said, Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly, the other surrounding characters, the other surrounding storylines they have in there as well, with Katie Girado's character, who has this backstory that's filtered throughout the movie that you learn about. That's good stuff. But yeah, I'm high, but I'm not quite as high as Dan.
Yeah. 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 So like you alluded to it. Yeah. When I first watched this film, like I said, I didn't quite, honestly, if I'd be honest, I kind of thought it was boring. I thought it was boring the first time I watched it. I was like, this is a little bit too, there's not enough gunplay. There's no, gunplay didn't really come in until the end of the film. Just a lot of talking. It didn't seem people walking around talking to each other. And I didn't really see the themes the first time I watched it. But this time, being a more mature person, and I'm looking at the right things, and yeah, I shot up the list. Like I would say on the philometer, I was like, I respect it. It's well made, but I respect it. I don't love the movie. I respect it more than I don't hate it, but I respect it. But now I would say it's good stuff. I'd say it's good. I'm not
nice.
obsessed with this movie for sure, but I could see myself working my way to obsessed, just like where Andrew is. Maybe over time, some more watches. But right now, I feel like I'm in a good place where I like the movie a lot now, and I'm in the good stuff range. So,
Do you like this movie enough to add it to your collection?
yeah,
Now,
yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay.
I think I could add it to my collection. And you both got that nice 4K Kino release that came out, I think, a year or so ago.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're talking about how this is relatable to me because this is a pick that I made.
Sure.
But I feel like you could correlate this movie to a lot of different things, and without getting too much into like politics or anything, you could correlate it to the president of the United States, like a Joe Biden, for instance, where he had this like dementia type thing going on, and he didn't come across the way he needed to come across at the presidential debate with Donald Trump last August. And then people are like, well, you need to do something. We need to do something. We need to get a candidate in there that can support and be able to go head to head with Donald Trump in this. And so you could correlate it to that, or you could correlate it to like a football coach who has been having some losing some games, and no matter what he does, he can't fix the problem that's going on, or a baseball manager, or a team owner in NASCAR or something like that, or where.
Well, it's sports movies really can be a good connection to something that's essentially an underdog story in a way. Like Gary Cooper is the underdog that's got everything going against him, and that's why I think I was going to say this earlier. That's kind of where I feel like that sums up the idea of how you connect to his character. Is you say loneliness, but really what it is that you feel like you're an underdog.
Yeah,
and you feel like Gary Cooper in this film is an underdog.
Yeah,
even though he
has
been successful. He's been successful in his life.
Yeah.
And he's at a place where he's about to retire, be good. But now he's in this situation where he is the underdog and everything is working against him.
Yeah.
And that's where, it's very relatable, I think, to a lot of people in a lot of different situations. So,
and that's why even though it's a 76-year-old movie, the more you watch it, the further along it has come in society. I think more people can relate to this than just the general terms of what it says in the movie itself. And that's why I found it more relatable the more I watch it. I see more things in it, and I watch more of the details. Like the great films, you watch them over and over again, and you see more things in them. The more, like, you watched it years ago than you watched it now, and you've seen so much more in it now than you saw back when you saw it originally. And that's the legacy of a great film, and that's why this film means so much to me, because it reflects so many different things that matter.
Mm-hmm. For sure, and that's. I think that's a great example. I think that this show can also create a great. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do on this channel creates a great example that it's always good to go back and watch films that you've seen, especially even if they were films you didn't like. If for some reason, because I got movies in my collection that I blind bought them, watched them, didn't love them, and then I've come back to them later and been like, you know what? I'm glad I bought this. Because when I watched this first time, I thought I should return this. But, it's just sometimes you're not ready for a film. Andrew talks about this all the time. He's like, I've been waiting to watch this film for the unwatched pile. He'd be like, I've been wanting to watch this for like 20 years. I just never really gotten around to it because I'm not in the right frame of mind. Sometimes you got to work your way up. A certain filmmaker that's like a Tarkovsky, and you're like, I know how Tarkovsky films are. I need to be in the right place.
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes you're not in the right place, and you have to tell yourself, I need to come back to this one. And I'm glad I had a chance to come back to this one to resurrect it in my mind as something that's worth watching. Because honestly, when you said High Noon, I was like, I don't remember. I don't think I like this movie. I hope I like it more the second time, and I'm glad I did. I really very much liked it the second time. So.
Well, good.
But,
I'm glad I brought something to your attention once again, and I'm glad I got something that Andrew could watch that he loved again, and he realized how much he loved it, and we had a chance to see how the themes in this 76-year-old movie can be relatable today in 2025.
Of course, man. That's the power of cinema, man. You guys just gotta don't be so quick to watch films and just throw them away for what you've seen on the surface. Keep digging into them. There's a lot. Good filmmakers make things with a lot more layers than just the story or the style of the directing. It's a lot more than that from our great filmmakers. So keep investigating films over and over again. You'll learn more about them as you watch them. But with that said, any last words, Andrew?
No, but I'll say it's good first pick by Dan. It's both nostalgic, probably for many, and also, a good movie in general. So that's kind of like that kind of check off list for probably many people who, have a sense of nostalgia and a sense of love for older films in general. I'm curious what we're going to follow it up with next time. Perhaps we'll go
do you want to go next, Andrew, or you want me to go
thinking
next?
About it, actually. I'm thinking
because it doesn't matter to me. I can tell you if I go next, it's going to be probably something radically different.
Oh, good. Then you go next. Just to swing the pendulum in another direction.
It's going to be something like I
Don't
scared
say
Dan.
it. Don't say it.
I'm not going to say it, but I scared Dan with one idea. I'm not going to say it, but it's like it would be dramatically different. But we'll see. I'll let you know. We'll let you know soon. We'll make a post about it when we get closer. Depending on if we can line it up, we might do this in 2 weeks. We might go ahead and this went well. We got this under an hour. So if we can do this, we can make this happen. So, but that is it for this first Movies Down Memory Lane with High Noon. Please, let us know what you think of High Noon. If it's one of your favorites, if it's not something you really love, maybe you'll go back and revisit it. Please let us know any of that stuff down in the comments. Please, of course, subscribe to the Chasing Labels channel, along with following this show. Follow, of course, Chasing Labels that comes every other week. And then also the Unwatched Pile, which is a monthly show. Look out for some reviews. Movie Mutations is coming. We're getting there, so watch out for that. That is it for tonight. And I don't have some catchy tagline to end this, but keep watching movies that make you feel.
Create your own memories.
Create your own movie memories. Good night.
Yeah, there you go. And the music will take us out. Beautiful music.